Now, let me ask you, let's go. I'm here at the boost section. We have two boosts here. There's the Katana Boost Vintage, and there's a dual pedal, which is the 80 plus the Katana. Tell us a little bit about this Katana first. So, this circuit is based on the Keeley Katana circuit. It has a lot of gain, a lot of clean gain, and has a more saturated voice. It has an option of a more crunchy voice. So, you have the option of a clean boost, so to speak, to maintain, push what comes next, but without necessarily adding saturation. If you have high gain levels in what comes afterward, you will obviously saturate, but you can warm it up without pushing the saturation. And there's a switch that you can flip to a gained loop within the circuit that will naturally give more gain, which is this little switch here next to the knob. It's a relatively simple circuit, which I saw when I started working, very efficient for what I intended to do. I see the boost for me, like it as I think about its usefulness as pushing something that comes afterward, I think the following. The equalization has to be as minimal as possible. Adjustment. Otherwise you start to clash with things there. There are so many alternatives in the signal chain that it can complicate the issue of tone, of equalization, not of tone, but of signal equalization. That if you can use a pedal that delivers a more balanced, flatter output frequency, it's more user-friendly. Especially because generally with a boost, you don't want it to color your sound too much, right? Depending on where you place it, you don't want it to add color to your tone. You want it to try to keep the signal as clean as possible. Unless it's mid boosts, for example, or use TS, which is characteristic of it, which is the delivery of mids. So to precisely achieve the result you're looking for, because with the Katana, you won't be able to, it will be more difficult. It's literally a clean boost, right? And it will work well, whether we use it, for example, at the beginning of the chain or at the end. In this duo, what I did, I placed it, even the musicians asked me, wow, you should have positioned this boost earlier and such. My goal is the duo, right? It's the duo. I didn't want to expand the box too much, The order selection switch, at the time I did this project, this here is the duo, folks. Not because of the switch itself or the circuit difficulty, because actually that's very simple, but the physical necessity of insertion. There. It would bring me an obligation to enlarge the box, as these pedals are like little bricks. And I didn't want to make a big pedal, I wanted to make a smaller pedal. Especially because the trend today is to minimize structure, minimize effects. If you can avoid taking an amp, this a little to the point of what is this trend today, then the boost is after the drive. So how am I going to use these channels here? For example, the flat channel is great for having a solo response. So you have a high gain pedal that will deliver a solo when you need to stand out in the band with minimal alteration possible. And what about this crunch switch? I even considered removing it in this project, but there are many musicians who use it together with the amp. So this warmer boost with the amp, since it's a dual pedal, the effects can be worked on separately. The crunch will give you a very interesting alternative when you need to push, as it's a high gain pedal, the drive. Will probably be at the end, but it will allow you to push the amplifier to a region you want. But this voicing that's happening there on this little switch is on top of the drive pedal. There are two switches. There's a rectification switch, which is what is referred to as the voicing. Normally, the term voicing, electronically speaking, is rectification. There are voice switches that direct the circuit to new regions within that electrical scheme. But this little switch it's a 3-position rectification scheme which gives you a response with a lot of compression. There will be a lot of attenuation. In the central position, minimal compression, that is, and rectification. 0. It will have more volume, a more organic sound, and to the right, medium compression, which is what the AT does. And the katana, this 2-position switch, it will toggle there for you. It's with a warmer boost. Very cool. Very cool. Now let's talk a little bit about the overdrives, which I saw here that there are quite a few overdrives. The overdrive and distortion section is the flagship, right? Yes, it's what has the most demand, perhaps. I think it's demand. And the market itself, I think the market window today, for those who manufacture in quantity, I think it's more focused. For those who manufacture analog equipment, I think it's more focused on the audience that consumes overdrives and drives. I even studied, we do, I don't know, an electronics course, technical or higher education. You, in fact, know nothing. It's like a doctor. When we graduate, or a lawyer, you specialize afterwards. I studied DSP's programming, but the market changed in such a violent and rapid way that I put that on hold. I even made prototypes with DSPs, but I preferred to keep the drive because I thought it would be very difficult for my structure to introduce a product with this characteristic. And my carcass, the little Markimenia, mine. My structure is very lean, so I would need to reformulate everything inside from importing components. It's a very drastic change. So I feel more comfortable working in this segment of drives. For example, the 2 effects I made recently were reverb and compressors, which left me very satisfied. The reverb for its simplicity and cost, and the compressor because it's a different compressor from the vast majority. So I saw opportunities like we need to have a balance to ensure viability, to produce so that the public can consume. So we can't have the ambition as entrepreneurs to create something that isn't consumable, right? So after all, it has to be to make things viable, right?
Yes, absolutely.